Hello and welcome to Medindia. This is Divyanshi, and today we'll be discussing an extremely sensitive topic. Out of top 7 cancers in India, childhood cancers rank 4th. Yet there is no special focus on childhood cancer. Childhood cancer represents the starkest area of health inequity, with survival rates over 80% in high income countries and as low as 20% in low income countries like India. To discuss on this special area of risk, we have with us Poonam Bagai ma'am, Chairman CanKids. Welcome ma'am to Medindia.
Hi Divyanshi, it's so good to be here today with you.
Very glad that ma'am and extremely proud of the fact that you have taken up such an important initiative. So I'll begin with this question only that please tell us more about CanKids and how did you have this idea of taking up this initiative?
So Divyanshi, on a very personal note, I'm a cancer survivor. I call myself a cancer survivor and a patient advocate fighting a war against cancer. I had cancer when I was 38 years old. And today I'm almost 60, by the way, right? So quite a while ago now. And I wasn't in India at that time. I had young boys and I was in constant fear of dying. And from that came a pledge that I would go back to India and I would work to make a difference to the lives of children with cancer. I call it my plea bargain with my spiritual maker, and basically said, if I survive, I'll go back to India. I'll help every child with cancer in the country. I came back to India. I was formerly a civil servant. And when I came back to India, I gave up my job and tried to understand how to make a difference to the lives of children with cancer and their families. I knew nothing about the development sector. I'm not a medical person, but I have gradually learned how to be a good patient advocate and a patient navigator. So I met my co-founder Sonal, and Sonal is the parent of a survivor. And I told her, listen, I want to actually hold the hands of all children with cancer and make a difference. And she said, well, you know, when my daughter had cancer, she was 2, and I felt very alone. I felt very alone, and I felt that no family should really have to fight cancer alone. And so I want to hold the hands of the parents. So together, Sonal and I set up CanKids, Kids Can, at that time under the umbrella of Indian Cancer Society, Delhi. And as you can see on my backdrop, we have this "You Are Not Alone." Our big umbrella protocol, our big umbrella project is "You Are Not Alone." We hold the hands of families of children with cancer through the cancer journey. And you asked, that's how CanKids started. We started in All India Institute, in Apollo Hospital, in Safdarjung Hospital, and Rajiv Gandhi in Delhi. That was in 2004. We then started growing outside Delhi in 2008, and we started partnering with hospitals. The first one was in fact in Patna. And today we partner with over 120 hospitals in 53 cities of the whole country.
Ma'am, as you defined about this wonderful journey and also the slogan that you follow, you're not alone in this journey. जब इस जर्नी की शुरुआत आपने 2003 में की, अब तब से लेकर अब तक क्या हम वो जर्नी जान सकते हैं?
हाँ, so दिव्यांशी, हमने शुरू किया दिल्ली में, दिल्ली के कुछ अस्पतालों के साथ पार्टनर किया. वहां सबसे पहले हमने सीखा कि परिवारों की जरूरत क्या है. एक परिवार जो इल अफोर्डिंग है, जो एक अस्पताल पहुंच जाता है, उसको ऐसी क्या जरूरतें हैं या ऐसे क्या बैरियर्स हैं जिसकी वजह से उसके ट्रीटमेंट में कोई कमी रह जाए, या उसके सहयोग में कोई कमी रह जाए, या उसकी देखरेख में कुछ कमी रह जाए. What we say, how do we enable best treatment, care and support, right? So we learned and we developed a whole range of social support services, how to give medical support to families. Many government hospitals have a lot, but there is always a gap. How do we figure out how to fill that gap so that उस वक्त जो परिवार आ गया, ऐसा ना हो कि क्योंकि उसके पास राशि नहीं है या क्योंकि अभी तक उसकी स्कीम, गवर्नमेंट स्कीम की फंडिंग नहीं आए, तो उसका ट्रीटमेंट रह जाए, राइट? इसी तरह से अगर उसके पास रहने की जगह नहीं है, तो वो मायूस होके अगर लौट गया अपने गांव, उसका ट्रीटमेंट रुक जाएगा. या उसके पास खाने के लिए नहीं है, या उसका बच्चा कमजोर हो गया तो उसका ट्रीटमेंट रुक गया। इस तरह से हमने बहुत सारी सोशल सपोर्ट सर्विसेज बनाई, जो कि हमें लगा कि दे रियली टेक केयर ऑफ द फैमिली, फ्रॉम medical support to supportive care to educating the children to psychological support, everything, to patient navigation, hand holding. फिर उसके बाद हमें लगा कि हाँ, लेकिन हमारे इस फोकस्ड एरिया में, चाइल्डहुड कैंसर के एरिया में, देयर इज अ मैन पावर शॉर्टेज इन मेनी हॉस्पिटल्स, राइट? आई एम नॉट सेइंग दैट दे डोंट प्रोवाइड सोशल सपोर्ट, बट मेनी टाइम्स अगर हम फोकस करके देखें तो अगर एक पूरे अस्पताल में एक साइकोलॉजिस्ट है, वो सब मरीजों को कैसे देखे? सो वी स्टार्टेड प्रोवाइडिंग मैन पावर सपोर्ट टू द हॉस्पिटल टीम कि अच्छा, आपको कुछ मैन पावर सपोर्ट हमारी तरफ से मिल जाए, सोशल वर्कर, डाइटिशियन, साइकोलॉजिस्ट, टीचर, पेशेंट नेविगेटर। तो वो then we went to the next step. Then we said, okay, we must have these partnerships across the country. क्योंकि जब तक पूरी जगह नहीं, तो again another barrier to access is कि मैं अगर जम्मू में रहता हूँ तो क्या मेरे बच्चे का इलाज सिर्फ हैदराबाद में होगा? क्या मैं इतनी दूर जाऊं? तो वी मस्ट नो कि कहाँ कहाँ पूरे देश में सेंटर्स हैं। और हमने क्या किया कि हमने इन सब ट्रीटिंग सेंटर्स जहाँ पे बच्चों के कैंसर का इलाज हो रहा है, उनके साथ पार्टनरशिप्स की, ताकि उस पार्टनरशिप के जरिए से जब मरीज वहां पहुंच जाता है, जब एक परिवार वहां पहुंच जाता है, तो उस समय उसको सहयोग भी मिलना चाहिए, उसको देखरेख भी मिलनी चाहिए, और उस डॉक्टर को ये दुविधा नहीं होनी चाहिए कि यार इस मरीज के पास पैसे नहीं है, मैं इलाज कैसे करूं, या मुझे एक बहुत अच्छा ये वाला डायग्नोस्टिक चाहिए पर उसके लिए इस मरीज के पास पैसे ही नहीं है, तो मैं कोई कम वाला डायग्नोस्टिक यूज करूं, right? So this essentially was our model. We call it a gap filling model. We say, and I think that this is important for India, that when we work in India, we should understand where any LMIC. You mentioned LMIC in the beginning. When we work in an LMIC, a big piece is resource shortage है कहाँ, और उस शॉर्टेज को आप कैसे फिल कर सकते हैं? टेम्परेरी होती है कई दफा शॉर्टेजेस, तो उस टेम्परेरी के लिए भी, उस परिवार के लिए तो वो टेम्परेरी शॉर्टेज उसके बच्चे के लिए जानलेवा हो सकती है, राइट? तो उस परिवार के लिए हमने टेम्परेरी शॉर्टेज पूरी की। एंड साइड बाय साइड दिव्यांशी, हम सरकार के साथ भी काम करते कि ये जो शॉर्टेजेस हैं वो ना बने, या सरकार जो स्कीम्स देती है या जो भी बनाती है, हम उसकी उपलब्धि करा पाए पेशेंट्स को, फैमिलीज को। सो वी आर एट वंस द पार्टनर ऑफ द हॉस्पिटल, वी आर द पार्टनर ऑफ द ट्रीटिंग टीम, we are the partner of the governments and the institutions that are providing support, and we are together holding the hand of that family.
I do not have words to actually define about the wonderful initiative that you have taken up. Either that's supporting the families, providing the man-source to the hospital, so it's wonderful. In the initial stage of the interview, we highlighted a statistics which stated that cancer among child is 4th highest cancer in India, prevailing in India. बट बहुत दफा ऐसा है कि लोगों को पता ही नहीं है कि कुछ ऐसी इंस्टेंसेस भी हैं। तो मैं आपसे रिक्वेस्ट करती हूँ, इफ यू कैन हाईलाइट हाउ ग्रेव द सिचुएशन इज, कितना चिंतन का विषय है ये।
So Divyanshi, childhood cancer is not one cancer, it is many cancers, right? Grouped together, childhood cancers are actually maybe a small percentage of total cancer, right? Maybe 4 to 5% of all cancers. But at the same time, as you've mentioned, it's the 4th highest in terms of incidence. And what is the inequity that we talk about is that we are focusing a lot of attention on the adult cancers, right? Which is correct. But we need to focus attention on childhood cancers as well. And the following are the reasons. Number one, the childhood cancers have very high survival rate. You also mentioned it in your introduction, 80% survival rates in high income countries. In our country also, there are centers who give 80% survival rate for an eye cancer, even 90% survival rate, for leukemia, 80% survival. Many of the hospitals will provide even 50 to 60% survival rates, right? But there are many that are providing lower survival rates. But what is more important in our country, of the total number of children who have cancer each year, only about 34% make it to a center. So without even being a maths wizard, you can see that if only 34% make it to a center and 66% don't make it to a hospital for treatment of cancer, then possibly 66% में ज़्यादातर का survival होगा ही. Right? So our whole push and our effort at the current time is to say, how do we improve access to care so that more and more children with cancer reach the right treating center for treatment?
Ma'am, as you said that our focus must be shifted to how can we improve the care gap. But also before talking in detail about it, I want to understand that how people can be alarmed, because a lot of times it happens that people do not understand that it is a cancer and they do not reach even to the hospitals, as you also mentioned.
So let me give you a clarification, however, right? For a long time, we have continued to say कि लोगों को पता ही नहीं. We are not thinking, and of course, this is a fact. If your child has fever for 3 weeks, you are not really thinking that my child may have cancer, right? But if your child has fever for more than 3 days, you will go to the doctor. So recently, we have done an access to care study, and we have released the preliminary report. It's one of India's largest, in fact, one of the world's largest access to care studies, where over 2,800 patients from North and East India were contacted with the idea of understanding, okay, how much time did it take? And Devyanshi, you would be interested to know that it takes a median time of 3 days for the family to reach a healthcare provider, right? But then it was taking a median time of 36 days for the child to get diagnosed. Now, what does that mean? It means that parents who have children who are unwell will go to the doctor. Will go to some doctor, right? The big question is, did that doctor know what to do with the child? Did he know how to think that this child needs to be diagnosed? Where will the child be diagnosed? Once the child is diagnosed, where should I send the child for diagnosis or for the treatment? Right? So when I'm telling you कि 36 दिन लग गए सिर्फ डायग्नोसिस कराने में, आप उस परिवार के बारे में सोचो, वो क्या कर रहे हो? डॉक्टर के पास गई, हो सकता है अपने प्राइमरी हेल्थ सेंटर में गए. प्राइमरी हेल्थ सेंटर वाले को पता ही नहीं कि अब मैंने क्या करना. सो इम्पोर्टेंट इज व्हाट कि इस प्राइमरी हेल्थ सेंटर वाले को पता होना चाहिए कि बच्चों का कैंसर भी होता है, उसके चिन्ह क्या होते हैं, व्हाट आर द साइंस एंड सिम्पटम्स, राइट? Then they should know that, okay, if I think that this child may have cancer because the child fits into that particular category of, cancer. Some are obvious. Agar गांठ है, like tumor है, solid tumor hai, you would tend to think that it could be cancer. If it's blood cancer, you may not think unless the fever was persistent for 3 weeks. But then, did you then thereafter know how to get the child diagnosed? Did you know from after the diagnosis where the child should go for treatment? So again, when we were doing this study and in some of the survivors that we work with, we have one survivor who said he went to 22 hospitals before he got diagnosed correctly. Right? So Devyanshi, a big part of what we are trying to do is trying to make sure that we focus the attention on what are the barriers to access to care. And that barrier is not कि परिवार को नहीं पता. परिवार को अगर यही पता है कि मेरा बच्चा बीमार है and वो कहीं किसी डॉक्टर के पास पहुंच गया, that's good enough. डॉक्टर को पता होना चाहिए कि क्या करना. Right? The doctor needs to know what he needs to do.
Absolutely, and I guess this is a very special area of attention where everybody should look, even if it's not about just the families, but doctors also know that it's the problem that is persistent and what is the line of treatment that they can follow up next. It's very important. Presently, you have launched a campaign that's named as Close the Care Gap campaign. सो अगर आप हमें इस कैंपेन के बारे में बता सकें और उसमें हैशटैग आपने यूज किया है फासला खत्म कर.
Yes. So there is an international body called the UICC, which is the International Union for Cancer Control. They launched a campaign, hashtag close the care gap. And we in India, CanKids, my NGO, we decided to, to Indianize the campaign. So we have called it Close the Care Gap, Fasle Khatam Karo, right? And Fasle is distance, Khatam Karo is close, bridge. How do we do that, right? For us, as I've told you, our focus is clear. We want for children's cancers that all those 66% children who are not making it to a center, we start making sure that they do reach. So we have launched this initiative on World Cancer Day, which is the 4th of February. On the 15th of February is International Childhood Cancer Day, which also is done internationally by an association for pediatric oncologists called PSYOP, together with an organization called Childhood Cancer International, which is an organization of an umbrella organization of over 188 members like CanKids, right? And within this period, we are running this campaign. What we are doing is telling people, think of a gap. So Divyanshi, if I was to ask you, तुम्हारा क्या फासला? तुम कौन से गैप को फुलफिल करना चाहती?
I am associated with a medium which can educate a lot of people. So I would be educating a lot of doctors because Medindia has this ability to educate doctors also.
So maybe your gap, then you will say, is my gap is that the lack of education for doctors, and you want to close it by providing more education, right? And that is why you must participate in my national competition and put that on an Insta, right? But the whole idea behind the campaign is let us create an awareness and an understanding on where are the gaps. It's very easy for people to say कि लोगों को पता ही नहीं. इसलिए हम जाके सिविल सोसाइटी में या लोगों को बताएं कि बच्चों के कैंसर का इलाज है, right? Yes, we have to tell people. बच्चों के कैंसर का इलाज है, समय पर जांच, सही जगह पर इलाज, कैंसर सेंटर इलाज. Childhood cancer is curable when it is treated in time and in a proper cancer center, correct? But we have to also understand that the barrier is not just coming from the lack of knowledge of a parent. The barrier in our case is coming from the lack of knowledge of a healthcare provider. And what is the lack of knowledge? What are the symptoms? Maybe where to get the child diagnosed? Where are the treating centers? Where should I send the child? What are the resources that are available for that family if they don't have the resources? Who are the NGOs who support them? Importantly, what are the government schemes that are available, right? And when we know all this, will we be able to do this? Same way for you, you said my gap is educating medical professionals and workers, right? So if you want to do that, you will analyze first, right? That, I mean, what is this gap? Who am I educating, right? So we've launched a national competition. We're encouraging people to think of care gaps, especially people like yourself. I'm really happy to be on your interview today because I think we talk the same talk. I think we're at the moment trying to do the same thing, trying to find ways to close gaps when it comes to health in India, right?
Absolutely. So ma'am, as you said that you've Indianized this campaign and the kids are writing letters to their respective MPs. So can you tell about that also?
So Divyanshi, we work in the hospitals, as I told you. Our teams work there with the children and with the parents, right? So we have patient navigators who are typically parents of children with cancer. We empower them and we teach them how to be patient navigators, right? So if there was a parent whose child is now surviving, or a parent who's even lost their child, we bring them in, we make them our members, we empower them and teach them how to be patient navigators, right? We have teachers. The teachers work with the children to keep the children learning during treatment, right? So what we have done during the campaign is that we have asked our teachers to help the children to understand what is the gap. A child can understand. What do you think a child is doing? The child is saying, मेरे घर और मेरे अस्पताल के बीच का गैप खत्म करो, right? मेरे दोस्तों और मेरे बीच का गैप खत्म करो, मेरे स्कूल और मेरे बीच का गैप खत्म करो, मैं जो खाना चाहता हूँ और जो आप मुझे खिला रहे हो उसका गैप खत्म करो, मेरे दर्द और मेरी खुशी के बीच का गैप खत्म करो. So one, we are encouraging them to understand this, to learn this, because it is very important to have what is called patient voice. You must have heard of the global charter of people living with NCDs and how people need to be involved if we want to have patient-centric care. Okay? So when it comes to the kids, when it comes to the parents, we are asking the parents to know and understand these gaps. When it comes to the kids, we're also asking them to talk about their gap. So last year, our children in the hospitals, our teachers worked with the children, and a lot of children wrote letters to Prime Minister Modi saying, sir, we want focus on childhood cancer. So last year, a lot of the children across the various hospitals made cards to Prime Minister Modi. They were learning how to write a letter. They were learning that you can write to your Prime Minister. They were learning that the Prime Minister of their country will listen to them, right? So they learned letter writing, they learned how to make cards, and they also learned how to write a letter to the Prime Minister. But we also had their parents write the same letter. Because at the end of the day, we all look up to our leadership to make a difference. Now, this year, the children are writing letters to their Sansad, to the member of parliament. तो जहां से भी बच्चा आ रहा है, वहां से बच्चा अपने सांसद को लिख रहा है, उसके माँ या बाप उसके सांसद को लिख रहे हैं कि ये जो बच्चों का कैंसर है उसको प्राथमिकता दी जाए, उसको कुछ फोकस दिया जाए, क्योंकि जब एक बच्चा सर्वाइव करता है, वो सारी जिंदगी जीता है, तो वो उस बच्चे के लिए, उस बच्चे के परिवार के लिए, उसके आस पड़ोस की सोसाइटी के लिए और पूरे देश के लिए वो प्रोडक्टिव होता है. So there is an economic argument, there is an emotional argument. Whichever way you see it, childhood cancer needs a focus. And this is what the children are doing currently. This year, they're writing letters to the MP, they're making cards to the MP, they're learning कि MP होता कौन है, संसद होता कौन है, and they're learning also कि मैं कहाँ से हूँ, मैं कौन से district से हूँ, तो मेरा संसद कौन है, और फिर मैं उस अपने सांसद को चिट्ठी लिखूं, और ये जो टीचर है मेरे इस लिफाफे पे मेरे को स्टैंप लगाना सिखाएगी, और फिर उसके बाद मेरी चिट्ठी चली जाएगी मेरे सांसद के पास.
Absolutely, and as you said, ma'am, that at the end of the day, we look up to our leadership for some real solving of the problems. And I hope that this campaign that you have started, it comes true and you make a big difference in this nation.
So I want to say this, Divyanshi, that the government is, I mean, not because I'm a former bureaucrat, I'm not saying it for that reason, but I really think that what has happened in the country in terms of healthcare, especially during COVID, has been quite exceptional. And we have worked closely with the governments. I told you that we are working with 5 state governments that we've signed MOUs, and we're working in another 15 states on making a difference to childhood cancer, because health is a state subject. So working with the state government, because it is the state government that will make sure that, you know, this information that we want the healthcare provider, the ASHA worker, the Anganwadi worker, the local pediatrician to know, they will make it possible. So like we have an MOU with West Bengal government, and they are the director NHM over there has undertaken to provide all the resource material, the IEC material, the resource directory to every district and to every district administrator and every PHC, CHC. So that is how we work together. We're also working towards working with the government of India, right? So all we are asking for is a focus. But I can tell you this, that our pediatric oncology community in India is phenomenal. We're a small community because it's, you know, childhood cancer is a relatively small cause for that reason. But the doctors, all of us, civil society organizations, a lot of state governments, we're working with the WHO that has launched an initiative called the Global Initiative on Childhood Cancer. It has asked for childhood cancer to be prioritized. It has asked that the survival rate for childhood cancer in LMICs like ours should be 60% by 2030. So many stakeholders are at the table. And I can tell you this, that, when I started in 2004, there was so little. And today I feel that, I feel like it has been my journey, but I also think that this journey is coming to a point where real difference is being made. Really, when I started with a dream and a vision that वो अंडमान और निकोबार के बच्चे का भी हाथ थामेंगे, वो हो रहा है. और वो हो रहा है तो फिर मेरे को कहीं ना कहीं मेरी अपनी पर्सनल जर्नी में ये लगता है कि हाँ, ये जो मैंने प्लेज किया था, वो प्लेज वास्तव में उसका एक्चुअली एक सोल्यूशन निकल के आ रहा है. पर वो तभी होता है जब सरकार करती है. और सरकार is now, I think, definitely engaged in healthcare in a way that makes me happy. I do want us to look much more at patient-centric healthcare. I want our governments to understand the idea of patient voice. You asked me about the campaign. दिव्यांशी, मैं ना एक बात आपसे जो शेयर करना चाह रही हूँ वो ये है कि बहुत तरक्की हो रही है. मुझे बहुत उम्मीद है कि जो हमने चेंज फॉर चाइल्डहुड कैंसर इन इंडिया लॉन्च किया है वो वास्तव में हमारे गोल्स अचीव होंगे. We will see 50% access to care for children with cancer by 2025. We will see 100% access by 2030. We will see 60% survival rates in this country. I am so optimistic and so hopeful. But there's one thing that I do want to add also, which I think this country should also look at, and that is the idea of patient voice. And I want to talk about it because I think that is what will lead to patient-centered healthcare. अगर हम patient को healthcare के बीच में रखना चाहते हैं, तो बहुत जरूरी है कि हम समझें कि patient voice की अहमियत क्या है. हम ये ना सोचें कि अगर बच्चे चिट्ठियां लिख रहे हैं जिसके पीछे एक एनजीओ ने उस पर काम किया है, या अगर मेरे सर्वाइवर्स ने 3 लाख pledges जमा किए हैं. So these are not, we have to understand that these are the voices of the people. The voices of the people are trying to reach the policy maker or trying to reach an institution. If we create machineries and mechanisms whereby we can hear these voices well, then these voices will strengthen the healthcare system of the country. Which is why lately, even with the WHO, we are talking more and more of the fact that the voice of the people living with NCDs, as we say, is important, right? We are saying more and more that governments should engage with civil society organizations like mine and others to hear actually what people do. And civil society organizations like mine must listen to their beneficiaries. I told you in our case, the survivors, the patients, the parents, we listen to their voices and we are building up their voices. We are empowering. I think that's very important, and I hope that that is where healthcare in this country will move to.
Definitely, ma'am. And as you pointed that policy makers must hear the patient's voice. And once the patient's voices are heard, the things that we are talking in the healthcare sector will be actually much more improved. Thank you so much, ma'am, for joining us in this health session. It was extremely important to discuss on this topic, and I'm sure that a lot of people will be educated with the child cancer and be more aware, either that's the family side or also the doctor's side. So thank you so much. And I'm ending with the very positive note that yes, audience, let's be the part of this campaign. Hashtag Fasle Khatam Karo, close the care gap.
Thank you. Thank you, Divyanshi. Such a pleasure.
Thank you.